So, all right, guys. Well, welcome to Wapiti Live Q&A for November 9th, 2022. This might be the only one for November because I realize 2 weeks from now, that's Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. So, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be traveling. So, well, I'm planning on traveling, but of course, Greg, after that weather that we had today, welcome to November in Idaho, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've already had almost 2 inches of rain
Yeah,
for the
and
month.
well, and then plus, the snow and stuff. So, and we're supposed to head over to Oregon, and I'm like, I always tell mom if weather permits, we'll come, but if there's any storms, I'm not going over the blues. So I'll just stay home. So, all right. So tonight we are going to dive into a little bit of a psychology lesson, and basically what it is it's how the mind kind of handles the four different stages of learning. And so let me go ahead and share the screen here and we'll kind of break into this. All right, so can everybody see this okay?
Yes.
Okay. So when you learn any new skill, basically you start in the first purple square, which is unconscious incompetence. So, which basically means you are completely unaware of the skill and you're also unaware of your lack of proficiency. So, this is basically a brand new elk hunter. Somebody that's going out in the woods, they're completely unaware of the skills, that are needed, and not just on the calling side, but also how the thermals work, and what type of areas they feed in and what type of areas they bed in. And so really, when starting out, elk hunting, you hear a lot of times that there's a huge learning curve when it comes to elk hunting. And this is where it comes from, because you get out there, and a lot of times you're hunting the mountain backwards. You're not in the right areas, you're not in the right places. You may be able to make a few sounds on a call, but you have no idea what you're doing. And now, the one thing that I like about this is where it talks about your lack of proficiency. So, and this is one of the things that, where I'm pretty blessed, and get to spend a lot of time at hunting shows and doing seminars and talking to a lot of people. And I've mentioned this before when, bugling at a sports show and somebody sits there and you do that in my area and the elk just run the other way. That is a statement that is, they're really showing their lack of proficiency of understanding, you know, elk. That elk are a dynamic social herd animal. That vocalizations are a prime part of their vocalizations in everyday life. And so it's one of those things that newbies go into it because they're unaware of so much. They I mean, again, another example, hearing people from the East Coast. Oh yeah, me and three of my buddies are going out to Colorado for 10 days. We're packing in 8 miles and we're going to shoot four bulls. I just kind of chuckle and say good luck. So, because the fact that you've never hunted before, you're coming from lower elevation, flatter ground, you're coming out to Colorado, you're going to spend the first day in altitude sickness and adjusting. And then, if you do happen to make it 8 miles back in, you're going to spend at least 2 days even trying to find the elk back there. So now you're 3 days in and you don't even have an elk on the ground yet. Plus, if you do get an elk on the ground, let's say you find an elk on day 4 and you get an elk on the ground, it's going to take you guys 2 days to pack that thing out the 8 miles, put it in a cooler, and get back to camp. Well, now you're 5, 6 days into your 10-day hunt, but dang it, you still have 3 more tags to fill. So this is the completely unaware of the skill and your lack of proficiency. The one thing is, though, it only takes 1 year of elk hunting to all of a sudden realize how unaware of skill and your lack of proficiency really quick. And so that what starts leading you into the next phase, which is the yellow, which is conscious incompetence. That's when you finally become aware of the skill but not yet proficient. So what this is so let's put this in a calling aspect. So the unconscious incompetence is you've never used a diaphragm reed. You don't even know which way to put that thing in the roof of your mouth. You don't know where it's supposed to go, how your tongue's supposed to come onto it, and how you're even supposed to make sounds. Well, as you start to put that thing in your mouth and start to play a little bit and put your tongue up on the mouth, and all of a sudden you get some squeaks and pops and squeals and things that sounds like a dying cat out in the hayfield, then you kind of start getting a little bit of proficiency. You can make some sounds on it, you can control it, and that's when you gravitate into that conscious incompetence. So because now you're aware of the skill, and that first year out there when you're in your unconscious incompetence stage, you hear vocalizations, you hear bulls, you hear cows, you hear communications, you kind of see them moving a little bit to different parts of the mountain, and you're kind of starting to be aware of things. So that's when, elk hunters go and they buy calls and they start practicing with them a little bit, but they're not proficient. They can't really do the sounds. They don't know what they mean. They don't know when to do them. They fully don't understand the behavior of elk. They fully don't understand the vocalization patterns and meanings. They fully don't understand how elk move throughout the day based on the thermals, what type of areas they like to feed in and bed in. They're starting to get a little bit of an idea because they noticed elk moving through the area that they were in. They're not sure why. They're not sure why they're on this part of the mountain in the morning and that part in the evening. And funny thing is, a good majority don't notice that stuff. So, and some of this, to go from unconscious into the conscious, it can take a little while. I mean, Bryce and Kevin that hunt with me, when I met Bryce, he and Kevin had hunted elk for 7 years in a row. 7 years, and never seen an elk or heard a bugle. And it just blew me away. I was like, how can you hunt elk for 7 years and never see an elk or never hear a bugle? And so talking to them, just how they were afraid to make a sound. They were afraid to make a move. They were afraid to do anything. And so they went to the far extreme and did nothing. So, and I remember that first year that, they went with me, they were kind of blown away at, how much I move. Even if I could see elk and elk were coming in, how much I was still moving. They were standing there frozen like a statue. And they're like, oh no, we don't want to move. That elk's going to see us. You're in the shadows. You have something blocking up your silhouette. It's okay. You can get away with movement. And so they learn kind of quick. So now when you're in that conscious incompetence, you're aware of the skill, and that's really when you start practicing. That's when you start paying attention. That's when you start reading articles and reading books and watching videos, and that's when you understand that there's a skill set involved in elk hunting. There's a skill set involved in calling. And now you're starting to practice, you're starting to gain the knowledge, you're starting to gain the understanding. And then from there, you slide over into conscious competence, which now you're able to use the skill, but only with effort. So this is where you can do a 3-note bugle, but you really have to think about it. The different types of vocalizations, you really have to think about it. And this also applies to the shooting aspect of elk hunting, especially if it's archery. The different stages, the more you shoot, the better you get, the more proficient you get. Same thing on the calling side. The more you practice, things just become repetitive. Now, majority of the people stay within the conscious competence, especially when it comes to calling elk, because they progress to that part and they're like, okay, I'm good enough. I can make what I need to. And I remember being in this stage. Um, I would only pick up my diaphragm reads 3 weeks to a month before season, maybe not even that long, maybe 2 weeks before season. And man, pop them in the mouth, and it was a lot of effort. And would roll into season still a little squeaky, poppy, but man, by the time season was done and you're calling on them, constantly all the time, you're dialed in, you're tuned in, your tones are sounding good, you've got great control, and then season ends, and what do? You put those calls on the shelf and let them sit there until next year when it's time to pull them back out and get going again. And that's why a good majority of people stay in that conscious competence. And in that stage too, they don't really fully grasp the full understanding of the elk vocalizations and how to do all the sounds. You don't necessarily have to do all of them out there when you're hunting, but it sure is nice having the ability to do that and make those sounds, because there may come a situation where that's the sound that's going to bring that bull in. And if you really haven't become proficient at it, you really haven't practiced it, it's not going to be there when you need it. So now the final stage is the unconscious competence. And this is just where it becomes automatic. And you guys have talked, or you guys have heard me talk about this before, where I've mentioned you're working a bull and all of a sudden he cracks this bugle and you just know he's coming. That's when you're in this unconscious competence. So you've done the research, you've done the time, you've done the practicing. I mean, everything is just really runs on autopilot. You really don't have to think about anything, just because you know what the thermals are doing each morning. They're coming down in the mornings and the evenings. They're going up during the middle of the day, during the hot parts. So you automatically know what part of the mountain you need to be based on the time of day. You know where the elk are moving. What sounds to do as the season progresses. Focus, first part of the season, we focus more heavily on the inviting cow, but as the season progresses, we start diving into the breeding sequence a lot more. Then as the season gets towards that tail end, man, the playbook's open. There's no restrictions at all. You can do whatever you want, but you have the ability too that you can read the elk, you can read your surroundings, you're paying attention. So it's the difference between conscious incompetence and conscious competence is, you guys have heard me ask the question, are you calling like an elk or are you calling like a human? And we see it all the time out there. Here's a quiet day on the mountainside. No squirrels are barking, no birds are singing. I mean, it's quiet. And you have these people that are just covering ground and they're just screaming bugles every 100, 200, 300 yards. Oh, I'm covering ground. I got to find that guy that wants to respond. But meanwhile, they're motoring by how many elk? I mean, tons of elk. It's because the whole entire forest is quiet that day. The only thing that's out there making a bunch of noise is people. And so the conscious incompetence, unconscious competence is sometimes can be a fine line, that it doesn't take a whole lot of extra effort to get from conscious incompetence up to the unconscious. It's just so many people get into that conscious competence and they're basically just, I'm happy where I'm at. I don't I don't need to advanced calling skills anymore. Um, I don't know. To me, I want to be as proficient as I can. I want to be on that autopilot. I don't want to have to think about it. I just want to think of, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and it happens. I don't have to sit there and think about, okay, how did I make this sound and how do I do that sound? I mean, we are at that point as we progress and as we grow, but I think sometimes when some people get in that green box, it's they're the same people that are okay with mediocrity. So now on the flip side, the unconscious competence, sometimes you can try to be too perfect. You can try to do too much. But that's where coming with the skill also couples and comes with the knowledge of how to use that skill at the right time and how to use those things at the right time. What do you guys think?
I I can flip back and forth at any given instance between the incompetent, the conscious, the unconscious, the competent.
Yep.
It just, you encounter a bull that's answering you, and yeah, you know what to do, but he does something. Now you don't know what to do, so you can flip back and forth.
Yeah.
At least I do.
Yeah. And that's basically so progression throughout these two is, I mean, it's time spent in the field. It's time with encounters. It's time with different encounters. It's also studying, paying attention to videos that you're watching. I mean, I don't just watch hunting videos anymore just to watch them. I'm
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 trying to
stu-
learn.
yeah, I'm studying. What are the elk doing? How is the elk responding? What are they doing? Oh man, that's kind of interesting. Or holy crap, I used to do that years ago, quit doing it. Why did I ever stop? So, but it's that constant studying, and I think that as you kind of start to progress from that conscious competence into the unconscious competence, it almost triggers a switch of where you're continually learning. You're continually, pushing. You're continually studying. It's an ever evolving thing. So just because you make it into the blue square doesn't mean you're done learning. Now your learning goes to a higher level. So,
I definitely recognize that unconscious incompetence season of 2016. Uh, just put in for to start building my number, and I drew, and I'd never been hunting. I didn't have a single call. I didn't have a pair of shooting sticks. It was a cow tag rifle, and didn't have a clue where I was going, and didn't even have a scope on my rifle at the time, so I had to borrow a scope and didn't have a clue where I was going. And I ended up opening morning in a draw that had a hot cow, and I had 4 bulls bugling at my camp. That's where I camped. They woke me up, and it was, I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I get up, and stupid me, I sat there and fixed breakfast and didn't get out on the mountain, and had some other hunters on public ground blow them out of there.
oh wow.
Never got my elk, but completely oblivious, didn't have a clue how to call. I had a cow call. I was trying to bugle on it, an external cow call. Just, everything I could do wrong, I did wrong, and I didn't get my cow. And then, I moved over here to Washington State and started trying to do archery. And I've been learning, and absolutely learned a lot from the group here. And now a little bit I'm recognizing calls. Unfortunately, where I hunt, there's not very much calling to be recognizing, because there's just not very many elk there. But
Right.
I think I'm starting to get into that green zone. I'm a long ways from blue.
Well, and I mean, you guys have heard me tell the story of my very, very first elk hunt. I mean, you want to talk about unconscious incompetence. So, but I was blessed with pure dumb luck on that first day. That
Dumb
first
luck
hunt.
is good.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, for sure. So, um, but like I said, I was going through a training video, and this came up, and I was like, huh. I said, I said, God, that would make a really good Wapiti Wednesday live Q&A and kind of talk about this, because I'm sure, especially looking at this and you read, how things progress, you can easily sit there and go, man, I remember when I was there and now I'm here, and okay, that's where I want to get to, and it just kind of lays out kind of a nice path of how to get to where you want to be. But yeah, it's also kind of fun to look back to where you started and just kind of chuckle and grin a little bit and shake your head and go, oh man, have come a long way since I was standing in that square.
You can easily flip back to that square in an instant.
You can, you most definitely can. And that's one of the things that um I talk about. And even though you walk into the woods on opening day unconscious competence, you are going to make mistakes that is going to put you back in conscious competence, because all of a sudden you're going to go, gosh, dang it, you idiot. I knew that. How could you make that mistake? And it happens every year. That it takes a little bit there at the start of the season to kind of get that mind back into things and go, okay, yeah, I remember what we're supposed to do here. I remember how we're doing this. So, and even still, you will I mean, still make mistakes that I know better, and you just sit there after the fact and you just shake your head, and it's like, man, you dummy, you you knew better. You knew what was going to happen there. You knew how that was going to play out. But still, it's one of those things that you get into situations, and kind of like where I was talking about Bryce and Kevin, they didn't know what to do, so they chose to do nothing at all. And sometimes choosing to do nothing at all is the worst scenario. So, because, well, nothing is going to come from nothing. So, but if you try something and it blows up, then that's when you slip back into the green square and you're like, gosh, dang it, I knew better. But if you try something and it works, man, you're sitting in the middle of that blue square, puffed, chest puffed out, and oh, I knew, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. So, but yeah, I do, yeah, I agree, Greg, that you can definitely slip, back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, every outing, I think when you enter the woods, you may go in a certain color, but something happens, you may revert for an instant back into the purple, immediately progress into the yellow, into green with the game plan. Now, okay, this is what I'll do with what I just heard or what I just saw. And so, yeah, you'll flip back and forth
Oh
between
yeah.
at least I do.
Well, yeah, you can most definitely, you could be sitting there in conscious competence, and all of a sudden you get into a scenario and you're all the way back into unconscious incompetence. Just and it could be something simple as like a weather front comes in. Now all of a sudden you've got high windy conditions. Well, crap, I've been elk hunting for 6 years. I've never experienced winds. I don't know what to do. I don't know what and that is one thing that happens a lot. Is that's a great instance right there with a lot of people that are solid in the green, but as soon as a weather front or something like comes in, man, they slide right back to the purple because it's not something that you deal with
Yeah.
a lot. And so it's like, man, I don't know where the elk are. I don't know where they went. And so, So that's where getting into that blue and you kind of start, you know, studying those things, but still you could transition from blue to purple too. So I mean, you know, last 2 years. Well, I mean, this year, you know, so hot and dry during September. I mean, you know, still pushing 80 degrees at the end of September, upper 70 degrees, sunny, dry. And it's like, man, this isn't normal. We're supposed to be upper 50s, low 60s for highs and you know, lows down into the upper 20s and 30s. And man, I don't know. And you know, these elk are quiet and so you always get some odd combinations that will shoot you back into other squares. But if you're open and receptive to learn from each of those, then basically that just strengthens whether you're in green or blue just a little bit more just because you've gained that knowledge. Now, if you go into it, you fall back from blue to yellow and you're not open to learning, you're just stumbling around and stumbling through. When that scenario comes back up again, you're going to be right back in the yellow, if not purple, instead of being in the green because you did, you know, you were open and you paid attention a little bit and you pulled some knowledge from that encounter or from that situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Last year when Fritz and I got to the spot we were trying to get to, and then we were going to do the breeding sequence, which we did. We started the breeding sequence while we're taking our packs off. So here we are in the green. We know what to do. We're doing it. And that cow galloped in from 150 yards in about 4.5 seconds to
Yeah.
within 15 yards of us. Now you have two guys that are in the purple zone. What do we do now? And immediately we go into the yellow because we know what we need to do. So we're conscious,
Yep.
but we're competent because that elk's standing at 15 yards. So then the elk is holding us in the yellow zone.
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's one of those things that, you know, just like I was talking about, you know, the second day of season when I left the bow at camp and you know had that bull at you know 13 14 yards and you know Bryce is like, when are you going to learn? And, well, I know it's going to happen, so I just eventually one of these years Bryce will figure out that if I leave my bow at camp, he just needs to come sit right next to me.
Yeah.
So, but
Just don't wear purple thermals.
purple thermals.
Yeah, that keeps you in the purple zone then.
Yeah, that keeps you in the purple zone. Exactly. Yeah. No, no, I mean, it's still constantly, you know, there are things that, you know, we forget and then we, you know, drop back on those things. And, I think especially as we, you know, get a few more ticks on the odometer and, you know, the mind's not quite as sharp and can't retain as much information as we used to or pull information. And so I think there does come to a point where we regress a little bit and kind of start falling back, you know, through the chain. But yeah, it is one of those things that progressing through each of those phases is really a lot of fun and a lot of exciting, and especially when you can see and feel yourself progress, especially on the calling aspect where you become more and more proficient on a diaphragm read and can do more and more. It just builds that confidence level up. But I think I mean for me personally, I know when I was really going through a lot of that, to me it was a lot of fun, and you know it was also, you know, there was that determination of, God dang it, I'm going to figure this out. I mean, especially when I first started on a diaphragm read, it was, I'm going to figure this out. And so you dedicate so much time to it. And so, and I think that's what happens is, you know, a lot of people, they get into it, they get that mindset, they get rolling, they get excited, they're having fun. And then they get to that green square and they just stop. And it's like, okay, I've got this figured out. I'm good. So. All right, guys. Well, there's my psychology spiel for tonight. So, do you guys think that kind of relates to elk hunting and elk calling a little bit?
Yes. But I've seen it at work in the medical profession, the scale, the ability, the
Yep.
skill. Yeah, they run you through the 4 squares, where are you at?
Yep.
And any given instant will change and move you around.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it in the four square like this, and I've seen it in the pyramid format also. And I like the four square flow, so I think it's a little easier to understand than that pyramid. So, all right, guys. Well, that's what I got for tonight. So short and sweet. Appreciate you guys jumping on.
It was good.
Perfect. Well, we'll get the recording up for those that weren't able to attend, and like I said, 2 weeks. It's that Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I doubt we'll be jumping on just because already planning on traveling, and so we will hit it there in December. So we've only got a couple more, and then the end of the year is here, and then we roll into a new year and start getting prepped for 2023 season.
It's a plan.
Mike, I think you need, or Michael, I think you need to start practicing throwing knives and just take a couple of those with you out in the woods.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I was talking to somebody the other day about going back. So, because I started on a recurve when I was 14, 15 years old, and so I used to love shooting the recurve, and I told somebody, I might go back to traditional archery. And then I go shoot my recurve or shoot my compound, and I'm like, I'm not going to go through that frustration.
Now, was this that compound that was going to be the raffle item that you liked so much?
No, actually, Greg and I were just talking about that because when we were talking before you jumped on, he was talking about his bows from 2006, and I was like, I got a new one in there. So Sandy, yes, I am planning on getting that raffle going. I've had a couple other people ask if I'm ever going to raffle that thing off, and yes, I need to because there's a new sight that I want to get for the V3X. So.
And then let's see, there was one more thing. Oh yeah, it's my duty to inform you there's supposed to be a call of the night.
Oh, really? Did you know that? Yeah, he left us.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Yeah, he sent me a really good message and basically just said, he and his partner had a great season, and we've just come to that part in our relationship where he is just going to move on, but he is sure that our paths will cross again, and so put me on the spot. So I got nothing for you tonight. I was so focused on the psychology. So
fair enough, fair enough. I had to tickle that bone.
I know, and I appreciate that. Now I know somebody's going to pick up the ball and run with it in his absence. So. All right, guys. Well, again, as always, keep calling, keep practicing. More importantly, though, have fun, and we will see you guys in December for one of the last Wapiti Live Q&As for 2022. Have a great night, everybody.
Sounds good. Good night.